Welcome back. We are speaking about the country's preparedness for the forthcoming general election. We did speak about the IEBC. We want to switch our focus now to the judiciary. Now, Chief Justice David Maraga has condemned the recent attacks on the judiciary by politicians, including President Uhuru Kenyatta and the opposition candidate Raila Odinga. Justice Maraga stated that intimidation of judges by political leaders undermines judicial authority as well as the confidence Kenyans have in the judiciary.
In May 2017, NASA leaders Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka said their supporters would take to the streets in event the Court of Appeal ruled in favor of IEBC on the question over who should declare the final results of the presidential poll. On 10th of July 2017, President Uhuru and Deputy President Ruto insisted that judges are working with the opposition to postpone elections.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about this for the next 20 minutes or so. Patrick, do you see where the CJ is coming from?
Yes, I do, and I think it's been quite unfortunate. The sort of interference has been going on with the courts. You know, I think that when parties has happened, today tried to impose or decide which particular judges should hear their cases. I think that's quite problematic. I think when they sort of try and intimidate, I thought in the case of Nas and the whole issue of where the final results are, I think it was quite unfortunate. First, when they tried to prevent the IEBC or to try and intimidate the IEBC not to appeal the case, which is something they're totally entitled. I mean, the IEBC was completely entitled to do, you know. And the Constitution does give the judiciary the mandate to interpret it, you know. So I think it's unfortunate when we are seen or parties are seen to try and pressurize, you know, the courts into coming up with particular decisions or one or the other. And given that the reasons we have this judiciary, you know, is that in the event we have disputes, we've got a referee we can all sort of abide by, you know, we can trust. Now, there's a lot of things I think the judiciary has. I mean, a lot of damage it's done to itself in the last 4 or so years. You know, from all the corruption cases been involved in, you know, all the allegations have been there, and even the way the judges have comported themselves. You can remember the cases to do with the retirement age,
right?
You know, which are quite unseemly. You know, so the judiciary itself has done quite a bit of damage to its own credibility. But I don't think that should in any way be an excuse for the parties,
politicians
to carry on as they've been doing.
Dr. the damage that Patrick speaks about,
right.
In your view, has it been done before the election, or has it been done in terms of affecting you know, the post-election status of the country in terms of maybe if there is an election petition for the presidential poll, for example?
Let me first say that I think the CJ was wise to quote elements from both the front runners with regard to these people said this at this point in time and this is why it was a problem. These people said this at this time and this is why it was a problem. And to state again that they intend to be fair arbiters in the interests of Kenyans. It goes again back to what we were saying earlier about a country's sovereignty and its methods of handling even its most challenging decision making. When it comes to the possibilities, and again, it's a time that's cloudy. And I've been using the word clouds over the past few weeks to kind of describe this space where we are in, where everybody is edgy. We're not really sure what's going to come next. We don't have the kind of certainty that we usually have when we are not at a period like this, in the sense where everybody's feeling like this is December and that next month is January. You know what I mean? So there's an oddness with which people are unable to be sure, and we shouldn't have to have the Electoral Commission start their name by saying that they're independent. They should be independent by default. But for us, we need the certainty that they're independent. And so we need to remind ourselves that they're independent. The judiciary, we know that they're independent. They're supposed to be independent. They shouldn't have to come out and remind us that they're independent. But this is the space in which we are. People are having to come and point at their names with a torch to say this is who we are and this is what we're supposed to be doing. And if this is the thing that we need as Kenyans, then let it continue, by all means.
All right. Javas, a lot of accusations on the political class. Which side of the political divide do you think has been most culpable?
Well, I look at it this way. One, in this election, we are going to have 14,522 candidates for all the positions. Mm-hmm. And from this, you can be assured that we are going to have more than 300 petitions coming after this election. With the benefit of the history of the 2013 election, where we had 187 petitions filed in the courts, and only 26, for example, that went through successfully. So the place of the judiciary is very important in not only this election, but even as an arm of government. Now, today, I have read the statement that was released by the Judicial Service Commission in the manner in which the Chief Justice, with the Judicial Service Commission, indicting political leaders who have been trying to play ping-pong games with matters judiciary, and at times seeming to be sending signals of intimidation to that arm of government. And the statement today has been very strong, very important, very timely. I have also read, for example, a statement that was sent out by Senior Counsel Alfredo Jambo. And I'm also aware, for example, that the Chief Justice tomorrow morning will be launching election dispute resolution guidelines to the country on matters of how disputes in this election are going to be handled, or possible disputes that will emerge out of it. I am also aware, for example, that the judiciary has trained and prepared over 400 judges and magistrates who will be in place to handle any kind of petition that is emerging or will emerge from this election. Now, the voice of the Chief Justice and the entire judiciary, and the firmness, and appreciating too, by the way of the strength of the Constitution, that the judiciary derives its power from the people of Kenya, who have given such power by way of the Constitution. It is important that political leaders respect the independence, the power, the authority of the judiciary. And in fact, for example, we've had from both sides. We've had initially, for example, leaders from the side of NASA who have pointed fingers at the judiciary.
Even
in fact, trying to stop
judges.
Exactly, including judges. Initially, they tried to stop the IEBC from appealing a matter that had been decided initially by the High Court. Yet they had respected the decision of the High Court. They were not ready to respect a decision of the Court of Appeal if it was to rule against them. Then one wonders, to what extent are they prepared to uphold and respect the rule of law? We have had, for example, even today, another section of the political divide who are calling on the Chief Justice to, and they were demanding, making a critical demand that a certain judge should be removed from duty as has been determined by the judiciary itself by way of its own independence. Right. It is a matter that is leaving very bad taste in our mouths as citizens, and in fact interferes with the very independence that has been prescribed by the Constitution of that judiciary. All right.
Ambassador, these attacks on the judiciary, are they a new thing? Did you experience this when you're a member of a commissioner at the defunct ECK?
Well, first, allow me to say hats off the Chief Justice. I think he has done Kenyans proud by coming out and pointing out the things that are going wrong. If we were not as strong as he is, if he gives any room, these people are going to push us back to the one-party system where orders were coming from some houses somewhere and the members of the judiciary were merely implementing orders from elsewhere. So I want to associate myself with what the other panelists have said, that the judiciary is independent and that is as per Constitution. The power is given by the people, and I think they should remain as strong as that. Coming to our time, you see, we were there before the new Constitution, and things were different. I think a lot of things that were done during those days we didn't have so much to do with the judiciary, but I think the State House had a lot to do with what was coming out from the judiciary. We now have the new constitution, and we have to move forward.
I think, if I may, we should also remember that the judiciary is not just a passive player in this. If you read our constitution, office like the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions is part of the judiciary. And they do have a mandate. If you look at the Contempt of Court Act that we have, that they can actually prosecute people who seek to interfere, with how courts determine particular cases. So I think, in as much as I applaud the Chief Justice for coming out, but I think at times the judiciary should bear its teeth, and needs to actually come out and punish people so that they can see that there is actually a consequence. When you try and impinge on it or interfere with its independence.
But you did speak about something about lessons learned by the judiciary from 2013. How different is the judicial space in this country this time around from where you sit?
Well, I think I'd say that there has been improvements, and I think, we've got to go back to 2012, 2010. Right. There has been, even from the days of radical surgery. This is the judiciary we have now is not what we had in Moi's days. So we've got to acknowledge that there have been great strides put forward. Now, I think one of the problematic areas still is this area of determining especially the presidential contests. I think how the Supreme Court comported itself on the last presidential petition was nothing short of shameful. I think it was really, really poor how they did it, how they adjudicated the case itself, and also how they presented it. A 10-minute hearing and then they walk away, without actually reading their judgment in open court. That I think was left a real bad taste in the mouth. Right. But in the aftermath of that, they did point out certain things that needed to change. The former Chief Justice said you need to increase the time that they have to determine a petition beyond the 14 days that the Constitution has. Yet when we had the chance to actually discuss that in 2016, the first things the MP said is, no, we are not going to do that. So they've already injured us, in that sense. And I think we are still in a situation where it's hard to trust. One of the things that sticks in my mind is one of the Supreme Court judges actually cited speaking at a workshop, saying that if they had more time, they might have made a different decision. What? Now, that is a shocking admission. It's a really shocking admission. Right. So we've got to really think about it. And what it means. If you remember, in 2008, it was the refusal to go to the courts, to actually litigate, adjudicate these matters in the streets that set the stage for the violence that followed.
Right.
Right. So for as long as right now we're not giving that space to be there, we don't have a system that people can trust will actually fairly and properly listen to the petition and adjudicate it on its merits, I think we're going to have a problem.
As we wind up,
let's not lose sight of the point that at some stage Parliament attempted to mar the things of the judiciary. They passed a law, actually. If it was not for the judiciary itself coming out to stop it, perhaps our Chief Justice would be an appointee of the President. Right. They came out with a suggestion that they sent 2 names or something like that, but it was rejected. I'm glad about that.
Yes, good point. Daktari, as we wind up, how do you think the judiciary should conduct itself in the next few days, weeks of this election?
The thing Kenyans need right now is, and I speak as one of the Kenyans that need this thing, not, the way sometimes we sit on these panels and we talk about the things Kenyans need and we are sitting behind a desk and, we are Kenyans and we are also going to be in these lines voting. And we are citizens of this country and we belong to this country by hook or crook for whatever it means. And so the thing we need is security and stability. Right? And when I say security, I don't just mean the ability to go out into the streets and do your business. We need to be able to trust our systems. We need to be able to trust that X and Y and Z is going to go on well. We need to be able to trust our police. We need to be able to trust our armed forces. We need to be able to trust all these people who are being sworn in, the presiding officers, etc. of the IEBC. We need to be able to trust the IEBC. We need to be able to trust the judiciary. When the Chief Justice comes out and makes a statement saying that we are impartial, Kenyans are going to believe that we are impartial. We can point out on both sides there has been nonsense, but we are not listening to that nonsense, and we need Kenyans to know that we are standing strong. That is a show that Kenyans, I believe, can trust. And when Wafula Chebukati always comes and says, we are ready for this thing, it's not just mindless optimism, and it's not just like kind of setting an intention. But we have to believe what he's saying is true, unless there is obvious proof to the contrary.
All right.
And the same goes for our police, our armed forces, everybody who is going to have to work together to make this electoral process a success. But again, the thing I will always repeat is that a good election, whatever a good election is, and we have different ideas of what a good election is, whether everybody goes home without there being fracas on the streets, we count quickly, we announce quickly, people are happy, we move on. That can be a good election, but we need to remember that the vast majority of Kenyans, and we were talking about this with Gathara earlier, this 5-year tipping point is the one place where they can see hope with regard to how their daily lives are going to be lived.
Right.
And so the work of belonging and the work of being a citizen continues in a democracy beyond an election.
Javas, your final thoughts?
I think when we look at all this, we are not at a very bad place, but there is so much that still could be done. Of course, on the part of IEBC, I would say that when you look at the provisions of Article 88, sub-Article 4 of the Constitution, jointly looking at it with Section, say, 43 of the Elections Act, you realize that IEBC has not taken the charitable provisions of those pieces of legislation. But much more than that, there is another limitation. When you look at the kind of election offenses that already have been self-evident throughout this period of the campaign, why is it that the IEBC has not taken aim of certain politicians?
Right.
Those who have used, for example, resources that are belonging to the state, those who have acted in such a manner that is contrary to the wisdom of the times, those who have incentivized the electorate, etc. We want to have an IEBC that sinks its teeth deeper into the flesh to make sure that it is effective, it is efficient, it conducts its business properly.
Thank you, Javas. Ambassador, what do you think is needed in the next few days?
Wanjiku is praying and hoping that we are going to have a free and fair elections. I pray that Wanjiku takes her position, peacefully go on next week to vote, ignore the negatives that are coming from our political leaders, because all they are doing is they're misleading us. Know that this country belongs to us, it belongs to all of us, and if we play our part, we should be able to go through election peacefully.
All right, thank you, Ambassador.
Ben, may I just say one last thing? And that's just to go back to what Dr. Njoku said. I think, for me, it's important that our institutions comport themselves in ways that they actually are seen as credible, that people can have faith in. There is a history to why people distrust our institutions, and it's actually incumbent upon the holders of these positions to act in ways that people can then invest trust and credibility in them. In the end, every Kenyan will have to determine for himself or herself whether the election is credible. And the work and the reason why we put resources into things like the IEBC and the judiciary and the police and all of this is that at the very end of it, we are trying to convince that Kenyan that the outcome we declare is an outcome you can trust.
Credible.
And if we don't act in ways that engender that trust, then all the investments we've done in all these institutions are really for nothing.
All right, thank you so much. I wish we had more time to do this. These are conversations that cannot be concluded in a few minutes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on the show this evening. Patrick Gadara, curator, theelephant.info, Dr. Njoki Ngumi, learning and development, the NES and HIVA, Ambassador Jack Tumwa here, former commissioner, the defunct Electoral Commission of Kenya, and Javas Bigam, political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So we'll leave it on the discussion this evening. You can be sure to join us all through until election. Kivumbi2017. as we dissect the questions that Kenyans have and need answers for in this electioneering period. And we have them here on your most qualified news station and election station in this election of 2017. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Kitili. See you again tomorrow. Good night from Nairobi.